Imagine waking up in a place you once called paradise, only to realize it has become unsafe. Linda's beloved farm, her sanctuary of peace and nature, is now shadowed by fear and uncertainty. Watching her struggle, Quang makes a life-changing decision to sell the farm and find a safer, more accessible home where Linda can thrive without worry, and he can care for her every day. In this story, follow their emotional journey from fear to hope and witness how love and protection can transform life. Don't forget to subscribe and join us for more inspiring stories. Linda's farm had always been a sanctuary, a place where the rhythm of life flowed slowly and gently, guided by the rising sun and the whispers of the wind across the endless fields. Every morning, she would step out onto the dew-kissed grass, breathing in the sweet, earthy scent of the soil, while birdsong echoed through the orchards and along the narrow dirt paths that wound through the farm. The farmhouse, with its warm wooden beams and cozy corners, felt like an extension of herself, a haven where she could retreat from the chaos of the outside world. For years, this was her peace, her safe haven, a world where she could simply be, tending to her crops and caring for the animals that had become her friends and companions. But over the past few months, a subtle unease had begun to creep into the edges of her life. At first, it was nothing more than the fleeting sensation of being watched, a shadow glimpsed from the corner of her eye that vanished whenever she turned. Then came the footprints in the soft mud along the edges of the fields, unfamiliar and deliberate, leaving her heart hammering in her chest. Occasionally, strange vehicles would appear on the narrow road leading to the farm, lingering longer than necessary before disappearing down the winding lane. Linda tried to dismiss them as coincidences, the harmless passing of strangers. Yet no matter how she rationalized it, a cold knot of fear had begun to take root in her chest, and her sanctuary, once so secure, now felt fragile and exposed. Even simple tasks began to carry a weight she had never known. Walking through the orchards, she would pause, ears straining for the slightest sound, hands instinctively reaching for something to protect herself. The animals, normally calm and cheerful, sometimes reacted to noises she could not hear, tense and restless, reflecting her own unease. Nights, once filled with the gentle hum of crickets and the lull of the breeze through the trees, became restless stretches of anxiety. Every creak in the floorboards, every rustle in the bushes outside her window sent shivers through her body. The farmhouse that felt like a fortress now seemed vulnerable, its walls unable to hold back the encroaching fear that shadowed her every movement. Linda knew deep down that this was not merely the anxiety of imagination. There was something or someone beyond the boundaries of her beloved farm, something that threatened the sanctuary she had so carefully nurtured. The thought of being caught off guard, alone and unprotected, gnawed at her constantly. Even her favorite places, the sunlit corners of the vegetable garden or the quiet bench beneath the old oak tree, now held a strange tension. The freedom and safety that had once been inseparable from her farm were slipping through her fingers, and with each passing day, the realization grew clearer. Her beloved refuge was no longer entirely hers. Quang had watched Linda struggle with the growing unease that had taken hold of her once peaceful farm, and the sight gnawed at him day after day. He could see it in the way she hesitated before stepping outside, in the way her eyes darted toward every shadow, and in the subtle tension that had settled into her movements. What had once been a place of solace and freedom had transformed into a source of anxiety, and he refused to let her continue living under such a weight. His love for her was steadfast, protective, and unwavering. He knew he had to act, not just as a partner, but as someone who wanted to preserve the light and joy in her life. He could not let fear define her days. One late afternoon, as the golden sun spilled across the fields, painting everything in warm, forgiving light, Quang found Linda sitting beneath the old oak tree, her hands clasped loosely in her lap as she stared at the horizon. The gentle rustle of leaves in the wind seemed to echo her restless thoughts. He approached slowly, not wanting to startle her, and sat down beside her. "Linda," he began softly, "I can see how heavy this has been for you. I know this farm has always been your sanctuary, your home, but I cannot watch you live like this, trapped by fear where you once felt free." Linda looked up at him, a mixture of relief and apprehension in her eyes. She wanted to protest, to argue that the farm was more than land and buildings, that it was a part of her, a piece of her soul that she could not simply abandon. But in Quang's gaze, steady and full of concern, she saw a promise that went beyond words, a promise that her safety and happiness mattered above all else. He continued, his voice calm yet firm. "We'll sell this farm. I'll take care of everything, and we'll find a new place for you, closer to the city, somewhere safe where you can still nurture your garden, care for your animals, and wake up without fear. A place where I can be near, to protect you, to support you, to make sure you never feel unsafe again." The idea of leaving her cherished farm stirred a tangle of emotions within her. Fear, sadness, and even guilt. But beneath it all, a flicker of hope began to glow. Quang's words were more than reassurance. They were an offering of freedom, a chance for her life to return to a rhythm of peace and joy. "I want you to walk outside and feel the breeze without hesitation, to see your animals without worry, to live without the shadow of fear looming over every step. You deserve more than anxiety, Linda. You deserve peace, and I'll do everything I can to give it to you." For a moment, silence wrapped around them, the wind carrying the scent of soil and grass, the distant calls of birds filling the space with life. Linda felt a wave of relief mixed with gratitude wash over her. Perhaps home was not just a place. It was the people who loved you, who stood beside you, who would fight to create safety and happiness. And with Quang's unwavering presence, she finally allowed herself to imagine a future where fear no longer dictated her life. A future where she could once again feel the calm joy that had drawn her to the farm years ago. In the days that followed, Quang threw himself into the task of finding a new home for Linda, determined to ensure that her safety and peace would no longer be compromised. Each potential farm was carefully considered, every detail weighed. The distance from the city center, the surrounding environment, the security of the property, and the ease with which he could come and go to support her. He wanted her to have the tranquility of the countryside, yet the reassurance that help was never far away. Linda accompanied him on these visits, her heart still tethered to the familiar corners of her old farm, but quietly stirred by the promise of a fresh start. With each new place they explored, she began to feel a cautious optimism that perhaps life could regain its former warmth, free from the shadows that had crept into her days. Finally, after days of searching, they arrived at a property that felt instantly right. It was a modest farm, not as sprawling as her previous one, but it offered open fields bathed in sunlight, a sturdy wooden farmhouse that exuded charm and warmth, and a gentle stream that meandered along the edge of the land. Most importantly, it was close enough to the town center that Quang could visit easily, yet secluded enough that Linda could still feel the embrace of nature. As they walked through the fields, Linda felt a lightness she hadn't experienced in months, a whisper of freedom that reminded her why she had fallen in love with farm life in the first place. Quang watched her with quiet satisfaction, seeing the tension in her shoulders slowly melt away. He guided her through the farmhouse, pointing out spaces where she could plant her favorite flowers, a cozy corner for reading, and a small barn for her animals. "This is your home now," he said softly, taking her hand. "A place where you can feel safe, where we can build new memories, and where I can be close enough to protect and care for you whenever you need me." Linda's eyes glistened with unshed tears, a mix of gratitude, relief, and love. The fear that had haunted her for so long seemed to dissolve, replaced with the quiet assurance that, with Quang by her side, she could reclaim the life she had feared she'd lost. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and painted the sky in shades of pink and gold, Linda stepped onto the porch of their new home. She breathed in the warm, earthy scent of the land, listened to the soft murmur of the stream, and watched the first stars appear in the twilight sky. It was not just a farm, it was a promise of safety, a canvas on which to paint a new chapter of her life. Quang joined her, wrapping an arm around her shoulders, and together they watched the day fade into night. For the first time in many months, Linda felt completely at peace, knowing that no matter what lay beyond the borders of her farm, she had a sanctuary built on love, care, and unwavering devotion. And in that quiet, golden moment, she realized that home was no longer simply a place. It was where they would face life together, hand in hand, heart with heart, safe at last.
Hello, xin chào tất cả các khán giả của kênh Lý Tử Ninja Review. Vậy là hôm nay câu chuyện của chúng ta đã kết thúc với rất là nhiều tình tiết mới lạ. Đó chính là việc Quang và Nina quyết định sẽ rời ở trang trại của cô và đi di chuyển đến một nông trại mới để đảm bảo sự an toàn cho cô hơn. Mọi tình tiết hấp dẫn về câu chuyện của Quang và Nina sẽ còn được kể các video tiếp theo. Các bạn hãy bấm vào nút subscribe để đăng ký kênh sẽ nhận được thông báo mới nhất về các tập phim sẽ được phát sóng hàng ngày trên kênh nha. Cảm ơn các bạn rất nhiều. Thanks for watching. Bye bye and see you.